John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm, and with Georgia's tax credit for entertainment productions, we have a number of celebrities that come in for estate planning. And today we're going to talk about someone who is not one of them, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise's estate plan would need to address the complexities of his high-profile career, his wealth from film and production, and his personal life, particularly his family relationships and public image. Here's how his estate might be structured. Number 1. The first thing he might want to do is establish a legacy trust to protect and preserve his wealth. With a career spanning decades, Tom Cruise has accumulated a substantial fortune through acting, producing, and various business ventures. To ensure his wealth is protected and passed down with minimal tax implications, a legacy trust, or dynasty trust, would likely be a key component of his estate plan. This trust could be set up to benefit his children and potentially future generations, ensuring long-term financial security and controlling how assets are distributed to avoid possible mismanagement. Number 2. Tom Cruise's estate includes a significant amount of intellectual property, such as royalties from films and brand-related earnings. Managing this fortune is essential, especially given the value of projects like Top Gun and the Mission Impossible franchise. An intellectual property trust could be established to manage ongoing royalties and licensing deals, with strict instructions to ensure these earnings are handled responsibly. This trust would allow his estate to license and maintain his image and film rights, creating steady income for his heirs. Number 3. Known for his philanthropy, Tom Cruise might want a portion of his estate to support causes he cares about, such as arts education, youth programs, or specific health-related charities. Additionally, he might direct a portion of his estate toward social causes or foundations he values. A charitable remainder trust or private foundation would allow him to continue making an impact through philanthropic initiatives, potentially directed by trusted family members or advisors. These trusts would also help reduce estate tax burdens and solidify his legacy in the charitable realm. Number 4. Cruise would likely prioritize his children's security and long-term financial independence. With these complexities of fame and public scrutiny, he would want to ensure they are protected financially without attracting unnecessary attention. For this reason, he might create discretionary trusts for each of his children, providing support while giving trustees the flexibility to distribute funds based on their needs. These trusts could restrict lump sum distributions and instead provide regular payments to ensure a steady income and safeguard their wealth. Number 5. If any of Cruise's beneficiaries are still minors, he would need a clear guardianship provision. This would ensure that trusted individuals manage their financial interests until they reach adulthood, especially if there are specific values or life lessons Cruise would want imparted. A guardianship trust could fund the minor's education, living expenses, and other needs, with provisions outlining specific values, educational goals, or even career encouragement based on Cruise's own principles. Number 6. With his production company, Tom Cruise would want to protect his creative work and ensure that his projects and any ongoing business interests remain in trusted hands. A business succession plan can ensure continuity and preserve his legacy in Hollywood. He could create a business succession trust, assigning a trusted successor, possibly a business partner or longtime advisor, to oversee ongoing projects and ensure his production company aligns with his vision. This trust could include detailed guidance on how to handle and potentially release unfinished projects or posthumously honor his creative wishes. Number 7. Cruise owns multiple high-value properties, including homes in the U.S. and potentially abroad. A qualified personal residence trust, or QPERT, would allow him to transfer these residences to heirs at a lower tax valuation, while potentially allowing continued use. Cruise could place his primary residences in a QPERT, transferring them at a reduced taxable value while retaining use rights for a set period. This would allow the properties to stay within the family, potentially reducing estate tax obligations significantly. Number 8. As with any estate plan, Cruise would need to outline his wishes for healthcare and financial decision-making in the event of incapacity. With his highly public life, he would need a trusted individual to handle these matters discreetly. A power of attorney would empower a designated individual to manage his financial affairs, and a healthcare directive would give clear instructions for medical treatment. A trusted family member or advisor with guidance to handle public and media scrutiny would be named to make those decisions. Number 9. As one of the world's most recognizable actors, Tom Cruise's image and likeness will retain value and attract attention even after his passing. He would likely want to control how his legacy is represented publicly. A right of publicity trust could hold and manage the rights to his image with strict provisions to control how his likeness is used. This would prevent unauthorized posthumous appearances, licensing, or projects, ensuring his image remains in alignment with his wishes and brand. Number 10. Cruise might choose to leave personal messages for his family, possibly including reflections on his career and words of wisdom for his children. A recorded message could be part of the estate, allowing him to communicate final wishes, personal messages, and advice privately. This would provide closure to family members and add a personal touch to his legacy. In summary, Tom Cruise's estate plan would be a sophisticated mix of trusts, business succession planning, privacy protection, and philanthropic goals. With an emphasis on maintaining family security, privacy, and control over his image, this estate plan would ensure that Cruise's legacy, both personal and professional, is preserved according to his wishes. If you have a celebrity that you would like us to plan an estate for, drop their name in the comments below, and we will do future videos on how those celebrities might plan their estate. We're going to have some fun with these, and we'll do fictional characters, and wait until you see how Iron Man would plan his estate. That's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. I also have a favor to ask. The voting for Best of Cobb is ongoing, and I'd like to ask you to vote for us in the various categories. I've put the links in the description below if you're so inclined, and thank you. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today, I'm going to accept the challenge of planning an estate for a celebrity. While we do have a few celebrities that we plan estates for, today I'm going to plan the estate of someone who is not one of them, Ryan Reynolds. Again, Ryan Reynolds is not a client of ours. For those of you who don't know Ryan Reynolds, how long have you been living under a rock? Ryan Reynolds is a Canadian-born actor, entrepreneur, and producer known for his quick wit, charisma, and down-to-earth personality, and most recently starring as the irreverent anti-hero known as Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds' estate planning would likely be complex due to his diverse assets, business ventures, and public persona. Here's how I would help him plan his estate. Number 1. While he has many valuable assets and interests, none of them are as valuable as his family. Ryan, along with his wife, Blake Lively, should set up a revocable living trust to hold their assets and pass them on to their children without probate. A revocable trust can be updated if their family circumstances change, and it offers privacy. In addition, because he's likely worth a significant amount of money, he could establish a lasting legacy if he set up generation-skipping trusts, or GSTs, to transfer wealth to future generations without additional tax burdens. Further protecting his family, and since Ryan and Blake have young children, they should set up a plan that includes detailed guardianship instructions. They should designate trusted family members or friends as guardians, while also making financial provisions for their children's care. Number 2. Ryan owns stakes in businesses like Aviation American Gin and Mint Mobile, which are significant parts of his net worth. He should use LLCs or trusts to hold his ownership interest in these companies. This structure would allow the assets to pass to his heirs or beneficiaries going through probate and keeping those details private. Number 3. Since Ryan is a high-profile public figure, he should consider some asset protection strategies. He should use a domestic asset protection trust to shield his assets from potential lawsuits. These trusts offer a layer of asset protection while still allowing him to access his assets during his lifetime. Number 4. He should consider an intellectual property trust. Ryan's personal brand as an actor, comedian, and entrepreneur is highly marketable. To protect his image, he should set up an intellectual property trust for the licensing rights tied to his persona, ensuring his heirs could benefit from any future licensing opportunities even after he's passed away. Number 5. Ryan and Blake have made significant charitable contributions and are known for their philanthropy. They should use a charitable remainder trust to provide income during their lifetimes, with the remainder going to charities they care about. This structure would also offer tax benefits and support causes that they're passionate about. Number 6. Like everyone, Ryan and Blake should have a power of attorney and advance directive for healthcare in place. This would allow them to specify their healthcare preferences and appoint a trusted individual to make medical decisions on their behalf if they're unable to. Number 7. Ryan should establish an irrevocable life insurance trust to hold any life insurance policies, keeping those proceeds out of his taxable estate. This trust would also ensure that his family has a steady income and financial support if anything happens to him. And finally, number 8. As a celebrity, Ryan should prioritize privacy. To avoid the public scrutiny that often comes with probate, he would benefit from a plan involving trusts and private agreements that distribute assets discreetly. In summary, Ryan Reynolds' estate plan should reflect his values around family, charity, and protecting his brand. By using sophisticated trusts and asset protection strategies, he can ensure a smooth transition for his family while maximizing tax efficiency and continuing his charitable legacy. Alright, that's really all we have to offer for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. Also, I have a favor to ask. Voting for Best of Cobb is in full swing. Would you mind voting for me and the law firm as Best of Cobb? I'll put the links in the description below so you can vote online. Thank you. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today we're going to have a little fun and plan the estate of a celebrity, Elon Musk. As you know, we hypothetically plan the estate of different celebrities to highlight the different options that they have, and we'll often learn that we can apply the plans they use to our lives. In full disclosure, I'm a big fan of Tesla and all the other companies that Elon has, like SpaceX and Neuralink. I've owned a couple of Teslas over the years and I love them. If you ever have a chance to test drive one, you should. But back to the estate planning. Planning Elon's estate would be an exceptionally complex task due to the sheer scale of his wealth, diverse assets, and potential objectives for his legacy. Here's a general breakdown of how I would plan his estate. The first thing we'd need to do is identify his objectives. What does he want to accomplish when that day comes for him? Would he prioritize the transfer of his wealth to his heirs, perhaps his children and other family members? Would he want to put priority on philanthropic goals like space exploration, artificial intelligence, or supporting sustainable energy? Would preserving his various business interests be a priority for him? Having a consultation where I could learn exactly what it is he wants to accomplish would be priority number 1 for me. The great thing about being an estate planning attorney is learning what our client's goals are and then designing a plan to make it happen. Next, we'd need to inventory and value his assets. Oh my goodness, what a job this would be. We know he has equity in Tesla, which is a public company, but I believe that some of the other companies that he has equity in are private companies like SpaceX and Neuralink. He absolutely would have real estate in various places, so we'd need to take stock in that. I'm gonna guess he has a substantial amount of intellectual property like trademarks and patents. Finally, maybe the easy part of valuing and inventorying his assets might be his cash and stocks and other investments, although doing that would also be daunting. Hey, like Biggie says, mo money, mo problems, but they're the good kind of problems, aren't they? So once we've done the part of determining and valuing his assets, we'd probably want to start with some business succession planning. I'd recommend a couple of things. First, let's start with trusts. He'd probably want a number of trusts to hold the equity in his companies to ensure they continue without having to be sold due to estate taxes. He could also incorporate a foundation to help align the business decisions people will have to make once he's no longer with us to make sure his long-term vision is maintained. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, estate taxes. The estate tax liability could be gigantic. He should incorporate a number of strategies to minimize these taxes. He could consider something like a charitable remainder trust. The way that works is that he could donate the assets to charity, but still retain the income from the assets while he's alive. Additionally, he could direct funds to a foundation or similar entity. I know he already has the Musk Foundation, so perhaps continue to direct funds there. Regarding the trusts, there are 2 he'd want to consider: a dynasty trust and a generation skipping trust. These trusts would provide for descendants and beyond while keeping assets within the family. This would also keep the assets from being repeatedly taxed as it went from generation to generation. Among the many other things that would need to be considered are his philanthropy goals and what he would want his legacy to be, whether making gifts to causes he believes in. He'd also have some international issues to deal with as his assets span many countries. One basic thing he should have, that you should have too, is a power of attorney and an advance directive for healthcare. These are must-have items in case he ever becomes incapacitated for some reason. These are basic documents you should have too. While I could go on for a while on the detailed aspects of an estate plan for Elon, consider that his estate planning would be complex. But there are vehicles in his estate planning that you could also use, like a revocable living trust and disability documents like the power of attorney. But By the time the day comes for Elon, perhaps he would have already invented a way for us to upload our memories to a device or the cloud so that we can all live forever. Alright, I hope you had a little fun planning the estate of Elon Musk. Please subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because hey, every like helps. One more thing. Voting for Best of Cobb is in full swing. Would you mind voting for me and the law firm? I'll put a link in the description below for you. You can vote every day, so please vote early and often, and I thank you for your consideration. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. For those of you who don't know me, I help people plan their estates, and I enjoy it. Over the years, I've planned many types of estates, and I've had people ask me, well, if this famous person were your client, how would you plan their estate? So recently, I created a video on how I would plan Ryan Reynolds' estate if he were my client. I'll put a link in the description below so you can see how I would. But today, we're going to have a little fun, and I'm going to plan the estate of some fictional characters to show you how creative we can be planning estates. Today, we're tackling the characters of Seinfeld. Seinfeld is a comedy series known as a show about nothing. It follows the daily lives of four quirky friends living in New York City: Jerry Seinfeld, George Costanza, Elaine Bennis, and Cosmo Kramer. Speaking of quirky, estate planning for the Seinfeld characters would be quirky and reflective of their unique personalities and relationships. Here's how I would tackle their estate planning. First up, Jerry Seinfeld. The goal for Jerry's estate plan would be to keep things simple. I'd put a focus on protecting his assets with some provisions for his family and charitable causes. Jerry, being financially comfortable from his comedy career, would likely set up a revocable living trust to avoid probate and keep his estate private. This trust would allow him to distribute assets easily to family members and possibly close friends. Additionally, Jerry is a charitable guy, if he feels like it, so he might have a donor-advised fund to donate part of his estate to causes he cares about, such as local New York organizations, the arts, or medical research. Finally, given Jerry's passion for Superman and his extensive sneaker collection, he might set up a memorabilia trust or include instructions in his will to ensure these items go to a collector who appreciates them. Second, let's tackle George Costanza. The goal for George's estate plan would be to keep things cheap and ensure he doesn't get taken advantage of. George is always looking to save money, so he might resist complex estate planning. He'd likely have a basic will that leaves most of his assets to his parents, Frank and Estelle, with perhaps a small fund set aside for his friends, especially if he feels obligated. To avoid more complaints from Frank and Estelle, he might set up a family trust to take care of them, assuming they survive him. This way, he could set up conditions to make sure they're provided for without him having to deal with their nagging during his lifetime. One thing I would do for sure in George's estate plan is to include a no contest clause, because George would be wary of anyone challenging his will. A no contest clause would ensure that anyone who contests his will is disqualified from inheriting, probably directed at any friends or relatives he doesn't trust. Third, let's talk about Elaine Bennis. For her, I would focus on making sure her independence is maintained, leaving a legacy that could possibly support any causes she believes in. As an independent woman with various jobs and no steady family structure, Elaine would probably set up a revocable trust for ease of asset distribution. She would want the flexibility to change beneficiaries as her social circles and priorities shift. Elaine is also socially conscious, so she might include bequests to organizations that reflect her values, like a ballet or cultural arts fund. She would also want to avoid any medical decisions being made by her eccentric on-again, off-again boyfriends like David Puddy. She'd likely have clear healthcare directives and designate a trusted friend, like Jerry, as her medical power of attorney. Fourth, Cosmo Kramer. For Kramer, I'd focus his estate plan on possibly supporting his friends and funding eccentric projects. Kramer's plan would be full of surprises. He might set up an unconventional or purpose trust to fund outlandish ideas, such as continuing his invention projects, like his coffee table book about coffee tables, or supporting a local karate dojo, or maybe a pizza store where you bake your own pie. Kramer would probably want to leave something for Jerry, Elaine, and George, with personalized gifts or small funds tied to their quirks, like Jerry's favorite cereal, a spa fund for Elaine, and perhaps a get-out-of-jail fund for George. Kramer also would be aware of the need to keep his business secrets safe, such as his file on the Real Peterman reality bus tour. A digital estate plan might be included to preserve or delete certain digital content upon his death. As a bonus, we're going to tackle Newman's estate. Hello, Newman. The goal with Newman's estate is to leave a legacy that's carefully documented. Newman would draft a highly detailed will, specifying his instructions for every minor asset. He might leave his stamp collection to a fellow postal worker or a portion of his estate to fund obscure postal-related projects. But as a government employee, he might be eligible for pension benefits or government retirement accounts, which he could designate to pass on to close friends or family. To prevent disputes with his estate plan, he'd likely also include a no-contest clause. Given his paranoia, he'd anticipate challenges and have a backup plan for his beneficiaries. Designing estate plans for the characters of Seinfeld would reflect their quirks, relationships, and values, making for a unique approach to asset distribution, legacy planning, and of course, a few laughs. Alright, that's really all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. I also have a favor to ask. Voting for Best of Cobb is in full swing. Would you mind voting for me and the law firm? If so, I'll put a link in the description where you can vote for us, and it's a lot like a mayor's race in Chicago. You can vote early and you can vote often. Thank you. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. For those of you who don't know me, I help people plan their estates, and I enjoy it. Some people like reading Sports Illustrated, but I like reading over old wills to see how people have planned their estates. Over the years, I've planned many types of estates, and I've had people ask me, well, if this famous person were your client, how would you plan their estate? So recently, I created a video on how I would plan Tom Cruise's estate if he were my client. I'll put a link in the description below so you can see how I would. Today, we're going to have a little fun, and I'm going to plan the estate of a fictional character to show you how creative we can be when planning estates. Today, we're tackling Iron Man, the fictional character from the Marvel comic books. Iron Man's real name is Tony Stark, and he has a number of issues from having a dual identity, owning valuable intellectual property, and having a spouse and children. Here's how an estate plan for Tony Stark might look. Number 1. Let's talk about his family. Tony has a wife named Pepper and a daughter named Morgan, who he loves 3,000. Given Tony's high-risk lifestyle, a guardianship provision would ensure that Morgan has a secure upbringing. Pepper would likely be the primary guardian, but if unavailable, Tony would designate a close family friend or ally to be Morgan's guardian. Morgan should be a high priority for Tony's estate planning, and he'd want her to grow up with financial security while remaining shielded from undue attention and potential risks. To do that, he could set up a discretionary trust for Morgan with Pepper and Rhodey, also known as War Machine, as co-trustees, controlling distributions as she matures. This structure ensures Morgan has a steady income with more access as she demonstrates readiness. Number 2, Tony would need to consider a business succession plan and who would control Stark Industries. Stark Industries is a global powerhouse with Tony as the face and primary shareholder. Preserving the company's mission, protecting against corporate takeovers, and ensuring continuity would be crucial. He would likely establish a business succession trust to protect Stark Industries from government interference or rival corporations. He might name Pepper as the successor CEO, entrusting her to maintain the company's ethical direction, especially in tech and defense. Tony also has a number of amazing technologies at his disposal that he would need to protect. Tony's Iron Man suits, his advanced lab, Jarvis, and other tech assets are powerful and could be misused. A specialized trust would keep these assets out of public hands and under the control of his allies. This trust could manage what I would call his heroic assets with strict instructions. Pepper, Rhodey, and Happy Hogan could serve as trustees with protocols for authorizing access, decommissioning, or transferring tech to trusted Avengers like Spider-Man. Number 3, Tony Stark is a bit of a celebrity, being a high-profile CEO and the owner of the Iron Man suits, so he has some intellectual property he needs to address. Tony's IP includes patents, royalties from Stark Industries tech, and control over his image and likeness, all valuable assets that should benefit his heirs. An intellectual property trust would manage patents and tech assets with trustees instructed to license only to entities that align with Tony's vision. This structure could safeguard his inventions, prevent misuse, and ensure ethical partnerships. Number 4. It's not well known, but Tony Stark was a bit of a philanthropist. His philanthropy included advancing clean energy, STEM education, and mental health initiatives. Continuing these causes would honor his legacy and impact society positively. To do this, he could create a charitable remainder trust or Start Foundation that could continue supporting these causes, managed by Pepper and a board of trusted advisors. This trust could reduce estate taxes and enable the foundation to operate indefinitely, continuing his impact. Number 5, like all superheroes and every regular human for that matter, he should consider a power of attorney and advance directive for healthcare. Tony's lifestyle and tech innovations carry risks, making it critical to name someone he trusts to make decisions if incapacitated. Tony should grant power of attorney to Pepper, giving her control over financial and healthcare decisions if he is unable to manage them. Number 6, finally, video messages. For many celebrities, being in front of the camera is not a foreign concept. Given his foresight, he should likely prepare holographic messages for his loved ones, offering advice, farewells, and reflections to provide comfort and guidance. To be fair, this was an easy one after watching all the Marvel movies. In summary, Iron Man's estate plan should combine specialized trusts, philanthropy, succession planning, and controls over his inventions and business empire. By establishing trusts for personal and what we call heroic assets, philanthropic causes, and successors, Tony's plan would preserve his legacy, protect his family, and ensure that his high-tech innovations are used responsibly for the future. Alright, that's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. And one more thing, I have a favor. Voting for the Best of Cobb is in full swing, and I would appreciate your vote. If you're so inclined to provide a vote for me and the law firm, I'll put the link in the description below, and it's a lot like the Chicago's mayor's race. You can vote early and you can vote often. I'll put the link there, and thank you. John Farrell of the Farrell Law Firm. We're going to have a little fun today, and I'm going to plan the estate of a fictional character. Keeping the holiday season in mind, we're going to tackle the estate planning for the Grinch. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because the next video will be planning the estate of the man himself, Kris Kringle. Whenever I do these estate planning videos for fictional characters, I have to go through and figure out what assets the character may have had and what their story is like to make sure I cover the estate planning issues they might face. The Grinch's estate planning would be unique and colorful, reflecting his eccentric lifestyle, solitary living, and eventual shift from mischief to community involvement. Here's how I'd plan the Grinch's estate. First, let's inventory some of the Grinch's assets. We know he lives in a cave on Mount Crumpet, and it's filled with quirky possessions, including a sleigh and gadgets. He also has a pet dog named Max. If you remember, Max was a very loyal dog. Another thing for the Grinch to consider is that he may have intellectual property, from his scheming inventions to his potential rights to his story. Knowing these things, here are a couple of recommendations for the Grinch. First, I'd recommend that the Grinch consider establishing a revocable living trust. This would allow him to manage his assets during his lifetime and avoid what could be a protracted probate process in Whoville. He might also want to consider some type of charitable trust. Remember, the Grinch redeemed himself, and so he may want to establish a trust benefiting Whoville charities, especially ones that spread joy and Christmas cheer. Further, he'd want to consider a pet trust for Max. You can't get much more loyal than Max. So the Grinch may want to consider setting up a pet trust for Max to ensure his continued care, outlining feeding, grooming, and playtime needs. Second, the Grinch may want to consider some tax planning. Although his remote location and unique lifestyle would pose challenges in valuing his assets, he could consider charitable donations and a gift-giving campaign to reduce his taxable estate and at the same time spread some holiday cheer. Third, the Grinch would want to consider a power of attorney and an advance directive for healthcare. He seems to be a little cavalier with his health, and so he might want to name who he trusts to help him make medical decisions for him. He could also include special instructions with the advance directive to include things like, hey, no Christmas carols in the hospital. Further, the Grinch would certainly want to include a no contest clause in his trust and will, given the animosity some in Whoville may have for him. He might also want to consider what the day might look like when he's no longer in Whoville, and may want to consider planning ahead of time, maybe a celebration of his life in Whoville Square that might have decorations, music, and a feast, perhaps including roast beast. I hope you enjoyed going through how I'd plan the Grinch's estate. Stay tuned because in keeping with the season, we will plan Kris Kringle's estate next, although I must warn you that Santa Claus will never die, so it may be unnecessary. See you next time. One more thing. I have a favor to ask. Voting for Best of Cobb is in full swing. Would you consider voting for me in the law firm? I'll put a link in the description below for you. It's a lot like a mayor's race in Chicago. You can vote early and often, and I appreciate you considering it. John Farrell with the Farrell Law Firm. Today we're going to have a little fun and plan the estate of the man himself, Kris Kringle, otherwise known as Santa Claus. I did a video a few days ago for the Grinch, so make sure you hit the link in the description below to see how his estate would be planned. For Santa Claus, planning his estate may be unnecessary because, let's face it, Santa Claus will never pass away. He's going to live forever. But there are theories that the position of Santa Claus goes from one person to another, like in the movie Arthur Christmas. By the way, everyone has their favorite Christmas movie, and mine happens to be Arthur Christmas, so check it out sometime. Regarding his estate planning, Santa Claus presents a fun yet complex hypothetical for estate planning. His unique lifestyle, relationships, and assets require creative solutions. Here's how I would plan his estate. First, let's identify some of his assets. His estate would likely include real estate. After all, it is well known he has a North Pole residence and workshop where he makes all of the Christmas toys. He also has a number of business assets. From his toy-making equipment to his sleigh and reindeer, it might be easy to overlook one of his more important business assets, the Santa Claus brand. Yes, Santa Claus would need to keep his intellectual property in mind. I'm also going to guess that Santa Claus has a number of investments and cash reserves. How would he keep that toy production funded? Along with those, he probably has a number of personal belongings, from personal gifts to that iconic red suit collection. So let's get to planning. One of the first things we would need to do is establish a legal framework for his estate planning. Santa's legal status is a bit tricky because the North Pole itself is not within any country's jurisdiction. So perhaps he would need to create an international trust or business corporation to own the North Pole's assets. This would help ensure a smooth transition should anything ever happen to him. Next, he would want to consider who the beneficiaries of his estate should be. Since it's unclear whether he has any confirmed heirs, although in the movie Arthur Christmas he has a family with children, there are a number of people he may wish to provide for. Let's start with Mrs. Claus. He would probably want to set up a revocable living trust to ensure that her financial security is provided for should anything happen to him. Next, his reindeer. Perhaps some of the more important parts of the Santa Claus story, he should set up a pet trust to cover their care and training. Finally, he couldn't do it without all of the help from the elves. Perhaps he should set up some type of specific distribution to the elves to thank them for their service and support. Keeping these things in mind, he would want to have a business succession plan for the continuation of the North Pole operations. He could have a chosen successor like he did in Arthur Christmas, or perhaps there's a protege elf he could train to become Santa. As an alternative, he could establish a governing structure like a board of elves to oversee the operations. One thing we know about Santa is that he is incredibly generous. Something I'd recommend is he establish a foundation, perhaps call it the Santa Claus Foundation, where he can support children's charities. Finally, let's discuss perhaps Santa's greatest asset, his extensive naughty or nice list. World leaders have been trying to get their hands on this list for years. I imagine that Santa doesn't have this list written down on paper. Instead, it's probably inside some computer database somewhere. So he would want to have some digital asset management to ensure that this list is handled ethically and confidentially. One more thing Santa would want to address. He probably has some inside knowledge on how to efficiently deliver toys to millions of boys and girls across the world. And so he'd probably want to leave behind some letters of instruction to explain certain traditions. For example, he'd want to make the protocols clear on chimney access. Also, he'd want to explain what happens when you run into guard dogs and perhaps share his values and mission for spreading joy around the world. Alright, I hope you had some fun with the estate planning for Santa. That's all we have for today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we put out new videos almost every day, and make sure you hit the like button because, hey, every like helps. One more thing. Voting for Best of Cobb is in full swing. Would you mind voting for me in the law firm? I'll put a link in the description below for you. You can vote every day, so please vote early and often, and I thank you for your consideration.